Together, we can achieve anything. Together, we're polluting the world. Together, we're destroying the environment. Together, we ruin the climate.
Or we can change everything. Together, we can stop pollution. Together, we can go green. Together, we can produce sustainably.
We can achieve anything.
Together.
It's possible.
We can make production
carbon neutral.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Barbara Buchner. I'm the Global Managing Director of Climate Policy Initiative, and it's my true pleasure being here today with you and moderating this panel on green economic recovery. The COVID-19 crisis has laid bare the social, the economic, the supply chain, and the environmental weaknesses that are no longer possible to ignore. In 2020, global growth contracted by 4.6%, and extreme poverty, global extreme poverty, is set for the first time to rise in over 20 years, and mostly in developing countries who are expected to be really affected in a particular way. So the pandemic has not only created massive uncertainty with regard to jobs in the short term, but it has also accelerated long-term structural shifts. But in its wake, the world's most prosperous nations have actually managed to announce an unprecedented level of government spending of $15 trillion. That's more than 15% of global GDP. And the sheer size of this economic injection implies that it will have lasting implications for decades or even for generations. So while born out of a terrible crisis, it provides us with a rare opportunity to spend this money wisely so that it not only implies we can address short-term economic factors, but it also lays the groundwork for longer-term infrastructure and systemic changes that we need so desperately in order to really address the climate crisis and also achieve the other important sustainable development goals. The question is, how? My organization, CPI, we've been at the forefront of putting forth policy and financial solutions for the green economic recovery. And this is why I'm so excited to be here today to moderate this panel, this distinguished panel, on really how can we foster the green economic recovery in order to make sure that it benefits both and addresses both the COVID crisis and the climate crisis, and it benefits the people and the planet. So let's get started, and let me introduce my distinguished panel here. It's my real pleasure to introduce on my very left-hand side Ministerin Eleonore Gewessler, who is the Minister of Climate Action in Austria. Wonderful to have you. Close to Eleonora, we have President Werner Hoyer, who is the President of the European Investment Bank. Very warm welcome. On my right-hand side, we have Clemens Hallmann, who is the CEO of Hallmann Holdings. Wonderful to have you here. And then on my very right-hand side, we have Minister Gerd Müller, who is the Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany. Let's get it wrong. You're like laughing. Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany. I did get it right. Wonderful to have you here. Very warm welcome. And last but certainly not least, it's a real pleasure to also having Kate Raworth with us, who is the author of The Donut Economics, and I very much look forward to knowing more about that. But let's get started, and let's dive right into the first round of our conversation here. And let me start with you, Werner Hoyer. Let me start with the role of the EIB. EIB obviously is the European Union's arm of lending, and you're the largest multilateral lender in the world, and also one of the largest providers of climate finance. So the EIB, the EU Climate Bank, has obviously become extremely important in this green economic recovery. So we'd love to understand a little bit more how you're doing this. How can you maybe explain just how can someone access the money from the EIB, maybe from a government, from a state, from a city? How are you doing that? And share with us your knowledge in this context.
Well, the best way is to come with good projects. And we have been in this field for decades. The bank is more than 60 years old. But over the last couple of years, it became evident that a climate bank would be needed, which would link innovation, climate, and development. These three dimensions belong inseparably together. On climate projects, well, we have pledged in the United Nations in 2019 at the Climate Summit to be climate or Paris aligned by 2021. At the beginning of this year, we were there. Secondly, we have pledged that by 2025, 50% of our projects will be climate or biodiversity projects. And thirdly, we have pledged to boost the economy by triggering an investment volume of 1 trillion euros by 2030 for climate-related projects. Now, these are huge figures, but they need to be implemented. And the idea of my institution is to be an engineers and scientists-driven bank. This is quite unusual, but I must say that when we find something new in the world, we have experts in-house who can tell us, okay, this is the way one should follow. So that is true for life science, where we were very, very active in the COVID situation with vaccine research and all these things. But this is also true for climate issues, and I think there we can make a difference. And when I made that announcement in the United Nations General Assembly in front of all the political leaders from the world, I did not have the backing of my board. That came later, and I must praise the member states of the European Union that they took that step. It was courageous, and not everybody in the world was happy that we moved forward because that put pressure on others.
Fantastic. Well, certainly EIB and you have shown a lot of leadership in this context. Again, just the different pledges that you mentioned, I think, is incredible. I actually want to follow up on one of them, because you said that EIB is planning to invest 1 trillion euros by 2030 in climate-related projects, which sounds like a really big undertaking, but we also all know that this is what needs to happen. But we obviously all love the plans, but today, as we have heard many times, we are keen on action. So can you share maybe a concrete project, one of the good projects that you said that really kind of is an example of this climate action?
Let me address that question with two responses. Number one, first, you have to avoid things that harm. That's the most important thing. You can make 50% of your projects climate-related. If with the other 50% you undermine these positive effects of climate action, then you make a mistake. So this is the one thing. This is why I've decided we move out of any financing of fossil fuel projects immediately. The second thing is you need to go into the development of new technologies. If I look at for instance, electricity need in Africa over the next 20 years, within 20 years, some people say, within 20 years, there's a necessity to get 5-fold electricity supply in Africa. If you want to increase that by the factor of 5 within 20 years, then you will see very, very soon that present technologies do not go for it. So we need to invest in new innovation for new technologies for this. And then you arrive all of a sudden at ideas which 20 years nobody had on the screen, from hydrogen to offshore wind farm, which is now getting huge, and these wind farms are getting huge and are less a burden for the coastal areas. Or you arrive at new technologies like the battery factories that we are setting up in Sweden. So it is remarkable. For that, you need, however, an institution that can afford to be wrong. Because if you really want to innovate, you must have the courage to fail. We live in my country, in Germany, in a society where failure is not an option, and that destroys so much potential. We must give the opportunity to fail, get up again, learn, and begin anew. This requires, however, a broad portfolio of activities into which you can invest, and then you can incur a loss and it doesn't destroy the entire institution. So I think this is the way. Keep always, and I see the development minister sitting there, keep always innovation, climate, and development together.
Innovation, climate development, couldn't agree more. And I think what you also said, like just make sure that we get out of the misaligned areas such as fossil fuel and really push the boundaries where needed, but replicate also what works, so you have this diversified portfolio. Thank you so much. Minister Leonardo Gewessler, let me come to you. We've just learned how EIB is supporting climate action, what is some of the triangle, the innovation, climate and development. What does this mean for Austria as you were addressing again this double crisis of the COVID pandemic and of the climate crisis? Over to you.
Thanks a lot, and also thanks a lot for the invitation today. I think what we all need to be very aware of, and it makes me confident also listening to many of you, that we all have a good understanding that we are at an absolutely crucial moment in time. We're in the middle of a big transformation. It was mentioned on the panel before, and the time is now to invest in a better future, in a greener future. We do have an enormous opportunity at our hands to shape our economy, to shape our society out of this moment of crisis into a better, a greener, a climate-friendly future. And let me be very clear. For this, we need more than words. We need action. And it needs action from all of us. And if on this stage today there were medals rewarded as climate action heroes, then maybe we should all take a look at that more as a reminder than as a reward that we absolutely need to take action now. And what does taking action mean, and what do we take from also the EIB's work and much of the work that's done in other countries and around the globe, is that we need to invest smart, we need to invest green, we need to reform smart, and that's absolutely crucial, we need to stop investing in the past. And this is where the struggle starts. Whether it's in infrastructure investments, in energy investments, we need to end investments in fossil fuel infrastructure. We were 11 countries struggling to make that pledge a reality in ending priority for gas infrastructure at the European level, so there is an uphill struggle. We're working on phasing out gas and oil heating systems in Austria, so we need to really put our words into action, and I'm counting on all of your support who's here in this conference today to make all of this a reality. And we have a chance at our hand. We have a European investment plan, the RRF, which gives us an enormous opportunity. The European Commission has put the Green Deal at the heart of this program. So there is a minimum quorum for climate investment, which in Austria we took very seriously, and we actually I'm lacking now the English word. Anyway, we almost invest double what's needed in climate investments. We make sure that none of the money goes into does harm to the climate, but it's only as good, all the investments are only as good if we have the framework and if we have the necessary regulatory frameworks to support that. So I'm very happy to announce on this stage that Austria will finally be among the states with carbon pricing from 2022. Ooh. So we're just negotiating that. Also counting on your support for that one.
Oh, I was waiting for this moment. It's a long time.
Investments that we're taking now, because what does this tax reform, what does carbon pricing mean? It makes investments in the future just much more sensible. It rewards those who want to make a contribution, who build houses that are energy positive, who invest in our future. And the other option is, if we don't do that, if carbon doesn't get a price, it's all of us who pay it. It's all of us who pay that. So let's face this, let's be honest to ourselves, let's push for change, and I'm convinced now's the time, and the framework is good, the international development is good. We need to seize the moment and actually really make this happen.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Time is now, but again, also, there is a real opportunity, and we're just having a video now that actually shows you this opportunity, so let's look at it.
I left partly because of the oil crash, but also I got tired of just how dirty it was. I actually spent quite a bit of time out at that particular patch. And you get all that dust and dirt out there. It's such fine dust, everybody calls it moon dust. So you're breathing that in, getting it all up in your pores, all over your body, in your eyes. You get that raw crude oil on your skin, which is not good for you. It gets all of your tools, all of your trucks, all of your clothes. It ruins your clothes. Solar, you don't have to worry about that. The most common thing that is smelled when you drive past an oil field is a byproduct called naphtha. And I mean, it's just shy of smelling like an open sewer. And that will permeate into your pores and it'll cause you to smell like that. Everybody there is basically conditioned to say that that's the smell of money. My wife, one of her first trips over here, I had just gotten off work a couple hours before she got into town. Obviously got off work, took a shower and everything, and still she comes in, gives me a big hug, kind of leans back, wrinkles her nose and goes, "Oh, Troy, what is that smell?" And I just laughed. I'm like, "Oh, that's the money, sweetheart."
With the last big oil crash, like many, I found myself without a job. And I found myself working in the warehouse of a local solar installer. It has been my pleasure and a blessing to be part of a sustainable and responsible industry. Solar truly is the future.
Because the majority of people don't know what we are talking about when you say climate change. But they do know when you say pollution is killing 7 million people a year worldwide.
Ideally, we're going to be energy independent. We're going to have clean air. It's very important. My health, my wife's health, my children's health. We do a lot of camping and backpacking, and we adhere to the tread lightly mindset. Just leave it better than you found it. So a clean environment. I want those great outdoor places to be here for my great grandkids.
Well, clearly lots of side effects that need to be priced in order to make sure that we really understand, what are the costs and the benefits of certain things. I did want to just mention the International Renewable Energy Agency actually reported that notwithstanding the pandemic, renewable energy jobs continued their growth in 2020. They're now at 11.5 million worldwide. So I'd love to just hear from you, Mr. What has Austria done to basically foster this green economic recovery that also generates some new green jobs?
A lot, but I'll try to make it very concrete because green stimulus always sounds very abstract. And the story that we just saw of Carol is extremely inspiring because what we're doing here is about future, it's about health, it's about people, it's about opportunities, it's about jobs. And if we're saying we're building a better future, then actually this is quite literal. We have to take it. We are rebuilding many of our countries. We're putting solar on the roofs with people like Carol doing that. We are changing heating systems. We're building new train tracks. We're really rebuilding our countries in a very literal way and renovating houses. And all of this creates quality of life, but all of this creates value locally, and all of this creates opportunities, and opportunities for many people. It's the electricians, the plumbers, the solar technicians, the train drivers, the tram drivers. You can continue this list. These are all green jobs. These are all future-proof jobs, and it's our duty to make them good jobs as well. And what we've been doing is really investing in all of these areas, in circular economy, in renewable energy, in renovation, in exchanging heating systems. We've have the biggest train investment package that Austria has ever seen to really use this opportunity. And I know we're talking about a health crisis that we're just going out of, but every crisis is a moment also to rethink and a moment to do things better, to do things differently. And I think that's exactly what we're doing in Austria. If we're saying we're investing $10 billion or euros in renewables in the next 10 years, if we're saying we're only the next 2 years, we're investing 750 million euros in changing heating systems. Wow. 17.5 billion in train infrastructure. So we really put all of this together in a green recovery program, building a better, a greener future, and creating jobs for the many people who want to be part of this journey already now.
Fantastic. Let's build forward together, as we've heard also in the previous panel. But the global economy is actually expected to expand by 5.6% in 2021, and it's the fastest post-recession pace since over 80 years. And that's largely due to some strong rebounds of a few major economies. But we all know that many of the emerging market and developing countries are still suffering from the COVID-19 crisis and its aftermath. So certainly we need to do more there. And that brings me to Minister Gerd Müller. Gerd Müller, Sie sind der Bundesminister für wirtschaftliche Zusammenarbeit und Entwicklung und haben natürlich... Können Sie mich nicht hören? Oh, gut. Das halt. Auf jeden Fall, Sie sind Bundesminister seit 2013. Könnten Sie Ihr Mikro in die Hand nehmen? Dankeschön. Seit 2013 und bringen natürlich eine sehr reiche Erfahrung in der Zusammenarbeit mit diesen Ländern, mit Entwicklungsländern, vor allem in Afrika. Könnten Sie mit uns einfach Ihre Erfahrungen teilen? Was meinen Sie, basierend auf Ihrer Erfahrung, was man in diesen Ländern jetzt machen muss, um die Krise zu bewältigen?
Diese großartige Veranstaltung mit allen Referenten fehlt ein entscheidender Aspekt. Wir retten das Klima nicht in Österreich, die Kollegin Umweltministerin, das ist alles gut. 0,2% des CO2-Ausstoßes weltweit verursachen die Österreicher, 2% die Deutschen. Das heißt nicht, dass wir nicht ehrgeizig zu Hause das tun müssen, was getan werden kann. Zum Beispiel, wie Clemens Hallmann, klimaneutrales Bauen. Das wird er aber gleich selber sagen. Wir retten das Klima nur im internationalen Kontext, wenn wir die Entwicklungs- und Schwellenländer mit einbeziehen. Joe Kerry hat vorher gesagt, die Chinesen sind bei 27% CO2-Anteil steigend. Von den 195 Ländern der Welt erfüllen nur 8 die Klimavorgaben des Paris-Vertrages. Aber ganz entscheidend ist ein Punkt, der heute überhaupt noch nicht angesprochen wurde. Der Klimawandel trifft am härtesten die am wenigsten dazu beitragen. Sie stoßen 10 Tonnen pro Kopf im Durchschnitt aus. Ein Durchschnittsafrikaner, ich war eben vor 10 Tagen in Westafrika unterwegs, der leidet unter den Folgen ganz massiv. Dürre, Verlust der Landwirtschaft, der Pflanzen, der Tiere, die Lebensräume. Wir haben 25 Millionen Klimaflüchtlinge bereits. Es werden 100 Millionen werden. Und die Afrikaner stoßen nahezu 0 aus, 0,2 Tonnen. Also sie sind die Leidtragenden dieser Entwicklung. Und es kommt jetzt ein entscheidender Punkt dazu. Derzeit werden auf dem afrikanischen Kontinent, ich könnte auch über Südamerika reden oder über Indien, auf dem afrikanischen Kontinent 450 Kohlekraftwerke geplant und gebaut. Also wir können in Europa 20 stilllegen, wenn dort 450 neu gebaut werden von US-Investoren, von chinesischen Investoren und von europäischen Investoren. Deshalb müssen wir Klima in der Ganzheitlichkeit der Internationalität betrachten. Der Himmel gehört uns alle. Und deshalb brauchen wir, lieber Kollege Werner Heuer, wir kennen uns ja gut und wir stimmen ja da auch überein, aber leider handelt die Politik an dem Punkt nicht. Wir brauchen die Ausweitung des Green Deals auf Afrika. Wir müssen Afrika zum Kontinent der grünen, der erneuerbaren Energien machen. Sonne, die Sonne der Sahara liefert die Kraft zur Produktion von Wasserstoff und Methanol, Solar, Wasser, Wind im Überfluss. Wir haben die Technologie. Also, lass uns aufmachen, ansonsten verlieren wir nämlich den Wettlauf. Wenn wir nur in unserem kleinen Österreich bleiben oder kleinen Deutschland, wir machen ja gerade mal 1,5% der Weltbevölkerung aus. Also denke groß, lieber Werner Heuer, und nehme von den 1000 Milliarden, da nehme ich jetzt das Recovery-Programm mit dazu, 1000 Milliarden hat die EU beschlossen, diese reiche EU, das reiche Österreich, das reiche Deutschland zu unterstützen mit Schulden am Kreditmarkt, damit ein Recovery-Wirtschaftsprogramm investiert wird. Und keinen einzigen Euro hat diese EU dafür beschlossen, dass im Senegal, dass in Sierra Leone, dass in den afrikanischen Ländern die Folgen des Klimawandels abgemildert werden. Das macht mich ein Stück weit wütend und hier brauchen wir eine Veränderung in der internationalen Politik.
Aber absolut Ihrer Meinung, ich bin absolut Ihrer Meinung. Basierend auf wieder Ihrer Erfahrung, was wäre ein wirksamer Ansatz? Wie kann man das umsetzen? Wie kann man das umsetzen? Was ist ein Ansatz, den Sie vielleicht, dadurch, dass Deutschland doch sehr viel macht in der Entwicklungshilfe, auch in der Klimafinanzierung, was sind Ansätze, die Sie denken, die den Ländern helfen könnten heute?
Also wir müssen die Investitionstitel auch für Afrika und die Entwicklungsländer zugänglich machen. Aber das ist nur das eine. Ich glaube, die Welt verändern wir durch Privatinvestitionen. So es sich rechnet, wird auch investiert. Und nun sage ich Ihnen, das größte Sonnenkraftwerk der Welt, das wir mit deutscher Investition, Entwicklungsmitteln gebaut haben, das steht in Ouarzazate in Marokko. Vor 10 Jahren hat sich das noch nicht gerechnet. Verstehen Sie, wir müssen ja die Wirtschaft verstehen, solange sich Öl und Kohle rechnet, wird nicht umgesteuert in den Investitionen. Aber zwischenzeitlich haben wir eine Effizienz bei Solarkraftwerken. Die Produktion von 1 Kilowatt Solarstrom kostet 2 Cent. Und das ist konkurrenzfähig. Im Gegenteil, kein Kohlekraftwerk, kein Kernkraftwerk ist hier konkurrenzfähig. 2 Cent. Und deshalb brauchen wir private Investitionen mit der Europäischen Investitionsbank, die Abstützung, Risikoabsicherung, und dann wird es gewaltige Investitionsschübe in diesen Ländern geben. Und dann habe ich Ihnen noch was mitgebracht, weil Worten müssen Taten folgen. Und Politiker sind meistens tolle Redner, super Speeches, große Papiere werden verabschiedet. Ich habe euch ein Papier da vorne reingeschmissen und da rufe ich jetzt Sie alle auf. Der Ministerin habe ich es gestern Abend gesagt. Was machst du? Was machst du für den Klimaschutz? Du selber, ich, du. Ich habe eine Stiftung ins Leben gerufen, Entwicklung und Klima. Jeder von Ihnen, wie er hier sitzt, kann sich persönlich klimaneutral stellen. Jeder von Ihnen in der Firma, die Hofburg, die Hofreitschule, Ihr Ministerium, Frau Ministerin, ich habe meines klimaneutral gestellt. Meine Kollegen sind mir auch nicht gefolgt bisher. Aber das ist Action. Geht nach Hause, tretet der Stiftung bei und stellt euch klimaneutral und reduziert euren persönlichen Fußabdruck in der Firma, im Betrieb, im Ministerium oder im privaten Konsum. Denn man sollte nicht nur auf die Politiker warten, auf Gesetzgebung, auf andere, sondern selber den entscheidenden Schritt machen, so wie Greta Thunberg uns vorausgeht.
Wunderbar, vielen Dank. Sicher, wie auch die Frau Minister gesagt hat, jeder muss etwas tun. So, danke schön dafür und call for action. We want more of that. But with that, let me actually come now to Kate. wonderful to have you here, Kate, and I'd love to just get your thoughts also on how can we move towards this green economic recovery. And you say in your book that a healthy economy should be designed to thrive, not grow. So that's an intriguing concept, and just love to hear more about it. And please introduce all of us to the economic donut model.
Thank you, and it's a huge pleasure to join you all today. And I'm really enjoying this conversation and very much agree with the energy of the Minister for Development from Germany. Thank you. So we know we need to transform our economies profoundly. And the 20th century model was based on the idea that the shape of progress is endless growth, endless accumulation. No matter how rich a nation already is, I'm sitting here in the UK, you're in Austria, from Germany, no matter how rich, and we are in the richest countries ever in the history of the world, our politics and our economics assumes that our success depends upon yet more growth indefinitely. This is not compatible with thriving upon a delicately balanced living planet. I believe the existential transformation we need to make is to realize that nations' economies need to grow and then grow up so that they can thrive. And this brings us to the donut. I have one here. So the goal is to leave nobody in the hole in the middle of the donut, falling short on the essentials of life. That's where people don't have the food, water, healthcare, education, transport that every person has a claim to. Leave no one in the hole, but at the same time, don't overshoot this outer ring of planetary boundaries, because that is where we destroy the life-supporting systems of this only known living planet in the universe. So the shape of progress for the 21st century is transformed. It is not endless growth. It is thriving in balance. And that changes everything. It means we put at the center of our vision becoming regenerative by design, regenerating the life support systems of our planet, but also becoming distributive by design so that value and opportunity is shared far more equitably within nations, but also between nations. This is either an overwhelming economic challenge or an utterly irresistible opportunity to bring the innovations and the new technologies and the new ways of organizing business and policy that we have long known we need. And I urge everyone to see this is an incredible opportunity to bring about transformations we already want to bring about.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate. I'd love to hear about one example. We have one success story where we know that, that this model actually has been brought to practice, and that's Amsterdam. So can you just tell us all a little bit on how does it work in practice?
Yes, so let me say the first principle of the way we work at Donut Economics Action Lab is that we have never once asked or lobbied or requested anybody to use this framework. It's all change makers, and they are everywhere. It's change makers who say, I want to bring this to where we are. And in the city of Amsterdam, the city government decided to adopt the donut as their model for emerging from the COVID recovery and moving forwards. So they've put it at the center of their strategy for creating a circular economy. 50% commitment to circular material use by 2030. So in less than a decade, the commitment is that more than half of the materials in use in that city will be being reused, refurbished, repurposed, retrofitted. And that, of course, creates jobs and it reduces the city's impact on the whole planet. So along with acting on climate change, we must act on our material footprints worldwide. And this, to me, by the way, I must say that it's clear that giving ourselves boundaries, whether it's carbon pricing or a commitment to circularity, boundaries unleash creativity and innovation. It's so clear that when we put those boundaries in place, the companies stop putting all their energy into lobbying against regulation, and they get on and put their energy into creating innovations that meet and serve the future. So boundaries unleash our creativity. Let's create the boundaries of the old economy that we no longer want, so that it unleashes the one that we know we need.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate, and that's really intriguing. And I think we have actually another question. We should have a video question, I think, to Kate.
Hello from Vöcklerbruck. My name is Sabine Pommer, and I have a question for Kate Raworth. How is it possible to overturn an entire economic paradigm Where did you start to bring this revolutionary approach into action, especially in rural areas?
Thank you for that question. How do you overturn an entire economic paradigm? When we put it like that, it seems impossible. But as Nelson Mandela said, it always seems impossible until it's done. And I believe the way things get done is by realizing that all change starts with someone, whether they are a minister or a CEO or a voter or the newest employee of a company or a mother at the gates of a school or each one of us in our own homes. I have been astounded over the last couple of years by the way that change makers pop up everywhere and say, I'm going to make this happen where I am. Whether it's from the personal action, transforming how we eat and travel and heat our homes, how we save and invest and divest and protest, or whether it is a CEO saying, I now have the courage and the conviction, as Maya said, it's the love and the legacy. Let us live on that. Bring that to your work, bring that to your politics, to your parliament, to your boardroom, to your classroom. This is the time. Are we going to step up? Because our children and their children will only ask us, what did you do once that you knew? And each and every one of us can say, I stepped up with the networks of influence that I have in my life, and I started to make that action. And that's how it all changes.
Fantastic. Well, let's just do it. I think I'm very impressed. I'm an economist, so just innovating paradigms in our field is not that easy, so kudos to you. And I think every one of us should really start with ourselves and trying to do that. But let's now actually move to the private sector and to a real entrepreneur, Clemens Hallmann. Sie sind ein Mann der Praxis mit viel Erfahrung im Gebäudesektor und Sie haben auch das Ziel, Ihr Unternehmen bis 2040 klimaneutral zu gestalten. Im Gebäudebereich muss man natürlich sowohl beim Bau als auch beim Betrieb emissionsfrei sein. Was ist Ihr Ansatz? Was ist Ihr Geheimnis, um diese grüne Transformation voranzutreiben?
Zunächst muss ich mal sagen, es freut mich wieder sehr, dieses Jahr Leading Partner des Austrian World Summits zu sein. Und ja, Österreich hat sich das Ziel gesetzt, 2040 die Klimaneutralität zu erreichen. Wir haben uns in unserem Unternehmen sogar das Ziel gesetzt, das vor 2040 zu erreichen. Und wir haben jetzt schon sehr viele nachhaltige und ressourcenschonende Gebäude in der Vergangenheit hergestellt und sind gerade jetzt dabei, im 21. Wiener Gemeindebezirk unser erstes urbanes Plus-Energiequartier zu errichten, welches auch das erste urbane Plus-Energiequartier Österreichs sein wird. Hier entstehen auf 34.000 Quadratmeter Gebäudefläche, Gewerbe und Wohnen. Die Liegenschaft wird energietechnisch versorgt werden mit 4.000 Photovoltaikpaneele, welche an Dach und Fassade angebracht sind, 110 Erdwärmetiefenbohrungen, die zwischen 150 und 200 Metern in die Tiefe ragen, kombiniert mit einer Gebäudeteilaktivierung, Stromzwischenspeicherung, Windparkschäfing, Regenwasserrückgewinnung etc. etc. Die Liste wäre jetzt lang, wenn ich sie vollständig ausführen würde. Fakt ist, wir werden mit dem Gebäude imstande sein, ca. 650.000 Kilowatt pro Jahr an Energie zu generieren. Was gleichzusetzen ist, wenn man 200 Einfamilienhäuser im Jahr betreiben möchte oder mit einem Elektroauto 80 Mal die Weltkugel umrunden möchte. Zur CO2-Kompensation wäre das gerechnet 15.000 Bäume. Es geht uns aber auch um die Bewohner unserer Liegenschaften. Und man darf ja eines nicht außer Acht lassen, es geht ja nicht nur um ökologisch und ressourcenschonend, sondern diese Gebäude sollen ja auch leistbar sein für die Bewohner, welche drinnen leben. Jetzt habe ich ja schon gesagt, dass dieses Quartier, wie der Name schon sagt, Plus-Energie-Quartier, mehr Energie erzeugen wird, als was es zum Vollbetrieb benötigt. Das bedeutet aber, gleichzeitig senken wir auch die gesamten Betriebskosten damit ungefähr um die Hälfte. Und wir haben ja jetzt in den Pandemiezeiten leidlich feststellen müssen, dass jeder einzelne Quadratmeter, den man mehr zu Hause hat, purer Luxus sein kann. Wenn man jetzt zum Beispiel ein Homeoffice hat, zählt jeder Quadratmeter, wenn man im Homeoffice ist oder man braucht noch ein weiteres Kinderzimmer. Und wenn ich jetzt noch eine kurze Rechnung machen darf, ein durchschnittlicher Haushalt hat 70, 75 Quadratmeter in Wien. Wenn ich jetzt am Quadratmeter 1,5 Euro sparen kann, das aufs Jahr hochgerechnet sind gute 1.000 Euro, aber wenn ich es jetzt auf Quadratmeter Mietmöglichkeit zurückrechne, dann kommen hier schon 7, 8 Quadratmeter raus, die man mehr mieten kann zum gleichen Geld. Und ich glaube, das ist ein ganz wichtiger Effekt. Unsere Gebäude werden sogar imstande sein, die überschüssige Energie wieder in das Stromnetz oder an den Nachbarn zu kaufen, womit wir natürlich die Betriebskosten noch weiter reduzieren können. Und ich denke, dass wir uns derzeit in der Stimmung des Zuzuges in Metropolen befinden. Und wenn dieser hoffentlich mit sehr nachhaltigen Gebäuden gedeckt ist, wird es eine Zeit des Umzuges geben, weil auch, wie soll ich es ausdrücken, der beratungsresistenteste Mieter oder Eigentümer einmal vielleicht draufkommt, dass es nicht so intelligent ist, mit der Gastherme oder mit seiner Stromheizung mehr die Straße als sein eigenes Heim zu heizen. Und ich denke, wenn diese Transformation richtig funktionieren soll und rasch umgesetzt wird, dann muss das ineinandergreifen. Und ich finde diese Symbiose sehr schön, dass man ökologisch nachhaltig bauen kann und gleichzeitig aber auch die Finanzmittel der Bewohner schonen kann. Und ich glaube, das ist eine schöne Synergie.
Das ist beeindruckend auf jeden Fall. Aber wir haben jetzt von Ihnen gehört, wo es funktioniert, wo man das umsetzen kann, wo sind die Herausforderungen, wo ist es noch schwierig, nachhaltig zu bauen und wirklich das umzusetzen. Gibt es noch Bereiche?
Ja, es gibt sogar einen sehr großen Bereich, nämlich Altbestandsgebäude. Altbestandsgebäude sind ja zumeist wunderschön anzusehen, aber absolut ineffizient aus ökologischer Sicht heraus. Hier bedarf es wahrscheinlich noch weiterer Anreize von der Politik, dass hier die Leute animiert werden, größere Sanierungsmaßnahmen zu setzen und sich mit diesem Thema, sage ich jetzt einmal, auseinanderzusetzen. Weil speziell im Altbau die Bereitstellung des Wärmebedarfs, dort entstehen sehr große Verluste. Und man müsste halt einen Altbau mit ressourcenschonenden, erneuerbarer Energie versorgen und mit einer komplett neuen Haustechnik. Denn von der Bausubstanz können die Gebäude das alle, die können mehr als die neuen. Man soll sie nicht unterschätzen, man muss sie halt nur auf den heutigen Stand holen. Und wenn ich jetzt noch sagen darf, die globale Immobilienbranche ist für ca. 38% des CO2-Emissionsausstoßes verantwortlich. Und es gibt nun mal mehr Altgebäude als neue Sustainability, energieressourcenschonende Gebäude. Also nehmen die dort einen großen Teil ein. Aber das ist nicht das einzige Thema, mit welchem wir in der Immobilie zu kämpfen haben, weil man darf nicht vergessen, man muss auch den Abbau und die Produktion von Baumaterialien und Baustoffen rechnen. Da muss man den Transport zur Baustelle rechnen und dann geht es auch noch um die Maschinen und Werkzeuge, welche man an der Baustelle braucht. Und die meisten, sagen wir mal 99%, werden heute auch noch mit Verbrennungsmotoren betrieben, die wiederum fossile Energieträger verbrennen und das Pollution erzeugt. Ja? Also das muss schon ein ganzer Kreislauf werden und hier ist sicherlich die Wirtschaft und die Politik in Zukunft gefordert, um das noch besser Hand in Hand umsetzen zu können. Denn umso mehr diese zwei Parteien, sage ich jetzt einmal, am gleichen Strang ziehen, umso schneller werden wir alle Klimaziele, die wir uns gesetzt haben, erreichen können.
Vielen Dank. Und wie gesagt, vielleicht ist das Kreislaufmodell von der Kate hier, kann helfen. Aber let's get back to the financial sector. You were talking actually about the building stock, and obviously we need resources. It can be done, but we need resources. So we need to make sure that we are moving money into sustainable uses and away from high carbon assets. And we have actually an intervention from the floor, and I'm very happy to hand over to Remy Vrignot, who is the CEO of Allianz Austria, for his intervention. Remy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, there's no doubt that as an insurer we are highly affected by climate and climate change. But we heard also today it's all about action, and we also realized that we can do a lot and also contribute a lot. So going back to 2014, Allianz in Austria was the first company in the financial sector deciding to introduce specific and measurable criteria, sustainability criteria in its investment portfolio. 2015, 1 year later, we decided to remove all coal mining investments out of our portfolio, and today we can say that a little bit more than 90% of our investments are sustainable, and we want to achieve 100% by 2030. We are truly convinced that investments into areas that have future, but even more that generate future for many of our generations and the future generations is done by our capital and done by the assets we are managing in the name of our customers. And this is our responsibility as investors. And this is the call, my call to the whole financial community and sector to follow us and to transform the assets under management we have into sustainable areas. And if I state that in Austria, if we take all the assets under management from all institutions, insurers, banks, pension funds, we accumulate 380 billion of euros. Now let's dream or imagine we can channel all these assets into sustainable ways. We can do a lot. So this is the call to teamwork to make the dream work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And let me just echo the call for action again. I think call for action is important, but let me also thank you, Remy and Allianz, for actually leadership in the financial sector, amongst others to the Net Zero Asset Awards Alliance. I think you've been really trying to push to make sure that the financial sector moves towards a more sustainable future, so thanks for that. But with that, we are going into our second round. We are obviously a little bit running behind, so I'm going to be very brief in my second round, but I'd love to just go a little bit deeper and discuss the structural change. How can you actually really, what are drivers for structural change? And I'd like to start with you again, President Hoyer, because obviously, an institution like EIB has a lot to offer. How can an institution like EIB actually help foster some structural efforts and really that can green the whole financial system, and in a way also not only fund new green projects, but also really contribute to systems change?
Exactly, by following the advice that the gentleman from the insurance just gave us, because I'm fed up with all the doomsday scenarios in which we discuss. I like to hear a little bit more of yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
And here, I must say, I'm extremely encouraged by what's happening in the private sector, and particularly on the financial side. Before I had my speech in the United Nations, I was invited by the European Association of Insurance Companies, and they're the top bosses now. And they discussed the issue of fossil fuel investments. And they said, after a while, well, you're right. It's crazy to invest into something that you will have on your balance sheet for the next 30 or 40 years, and you know exactly, in 15 or 20 years, you have to write it off. So it is not ideology, it's not wishful thinking that drives me in the abolition of fossil fuels, it's economics, because at the end of the day, if we do not succeed in getting out there soon enough, we'll have something as stranded assets on the balance sheets, and this, at the end of the day, for a public institution like mine, lands on the balance sheet of the taxpayer. So let's do that now. And if this recognition is there more in the private sector sometimes than in the public sector, and I can encourage politicians only to listen to people like Mr. King Mr. Fink from BlackRock, for instance, who has written to all CEOs in the world that they should take this into consideration and align with the new thinking on climate innovation and development.
I completely agree, and I just want to say, we at my organization, we've been starting to actually track progress, and I do have to say the private sector has made a lot of progress. The public sector, and not all the public sector, but lots of the institutions are actually lagging. How can we, however, make sure that we know how we measure progress? Is there, that, you know, I'd love to hear your view on the taxonomy, but particularly because I do feel we need to have a common language to really understand.
Absolutely, we need to have principles, and we were the ones who issued the first green bonds in 2007. And everybody in the market thought this is a pretty lunatic idea, it will fail. It did not fail, but only after we made sure that we would avoid greenwashing, green cheating. So also for the new technologies that we want to go into, we need to make sure that for the financing of these activities, we need to have rules. This is what the taxonomy is for. The word is stupid because for some people it's deterrent because of the first three letters. Tax, no, it has nothing to do with tax. It has something to do with order. You need to bring order into the system. You need to have accountability, transparency, and reporting needs. And if that is given, then the investors trust you, and then they give you the money. I need to go to the markets every year in order to finance the activities of my bank for 60 to 90 billion euros. So you need the trust of the investors, and if you cheat them by greenwashing, then they will not come anymore.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Herr Hallmeier, wir haben gerade gehört, was die Taxonomie sozusagen beinhaltet, warum die Taxonomie wichtig ist. Was bedeutet das in Praxis und vor allem im Gebäudebereich? Wie bereitet man sich auf diese neuen Spielregeln vor, die das Greenwashing sozusagen hoffentlich nicht mehr unterstützen werden?
Also nachdem wir uns mit dem Thema schon viele Jahre beschäftigen, sind wir hier auch gut gerüstet. Und wir developen gerade in 3 europäischen Ländern über 500.000 Quadratmeter, die dann heute schon den Taxonomie-Vorschriften entsprechen werden oder, wie am Plus-Energiequartier von uns, diese sogar weit übertreffen werden. Ich finde aber die Taxonomieverordnung ein sehr, sehr wichtiges Instrument für die Zukunft. Denn es wird auch dem Finanzsektor die Transparenz und die Sicherheit geben, welche dieser braucht, um besser Finanzmittel für nachhaltige, energieressourcenschonende Liegenschaften, Immobilien zur Verfügung stellen zu können. Und auch wenn ich den Herrn von der Allianz gerade vorher zugehört habe, es wird auch so sein, dass in Zukunft jede Versicherung, jeder institutionelle Großinvestor taxonomie-zertifizierte Immobilien in seinem Portfolio braucht und wahrscheinlich sogar in einigen wenigen Jahren nur mehr solche kaufen wird, weil es anders gar nicht mehr möglich ist.
Absolut, absolut. Wunderbar.
Dadurch kommt natürlich ein Riesendruck auf die Immobilienbranche. Nachhaltige, energieressourcenschonende Gebäude rasch umzusetzen, was ich aber auch absolut wichtig und richtig erachte. Wir sind ja schon sehr bemüht, dass wir solche Gebäude erstellen und einige andere unserer Branche auch, aber wir alleine sind zu wenig, um den CO2-Ausstoß in unserer Branche zu verringern. Deshalb fordere ich auf, bitte folgt unserem kleinen Beispiel. Es funktioniert, es tut nicht weh, man kann viel umsetzen, man kann damit viel erreichen. Ich möchte mich auch bei meinem Freund Arnold Schwarzenegger und Monika Langthal und deren Team ganz herzlich bedanken für diesen wundervollen World Summit, den wir heute erleben durften. Und wir haben wieder ein wichtiges Signal zum Umweltschutz in die Welt senden können. Nach dem Motto, if we plant the right seeds, tomorrow will be better.
Thank you so much. Danke so. And thanks for another call for action. But with that, actually, we are going to focus on one more concrete example. We have one more intervention from the audience. We have Ingmar Hörbart, who is the Managing Director of the Austrian Climate and Energy Fund, and I'm looking forward to hearing your climate action story.
Ja, herzlichen Dank. Der Klima- und Energiefonds beschäftigt sich schon seit 14 Jahren mit der Transformation des Energie- und Mobilitätssystems. Und uns geht es hier um ganz konkrete Zukunftslösungen, die umsetzbar sind. Das heißt, wir beschäftigen uns damit, in konkreten Modellen zu zeigen, wie man mit innovativen Technologien und auch mit innovativen Systemen hier die Zukunftslösungen schaffen kann. Um an Herrn Hallmann anzuschlagen oder beziehungsweise fortzusetzen, unser Programm Mustersanierungen zum Beispiel, das ist ein Programm, das zeigt, wie man mit den Sanierungen plus Energiehäuser sanieren kann und gestalten kann. Unsere Klima- und Energiemodellregionen wären ein anderes Beispiel. Wir haben 2 Modellregionsmanagerinnen hier per Video zugeschaltet gehabt. Die Regionen sind auf dem Weg hin zu 100% erneuerbarer Energie. Das heißt, sie weg von fossilen Energien, sie stellen das System um. Und das Besondere an diesen Regionen ist, dass wir hier ganz nah an den Bürgerinnen und Bürgern sind. Es ist eine Bottom-up-Bewegung. die getragen wird von dem Engagement der Bürgerinnen. Und jetzt komme ich zum Kern der Sache, weil diese Bürgerbewegung wird jetzt auf EU-Ebene einen enormen Anschub bekommen. Und zwar durch eine EU-Richtlinie, die hoffentlich nächste Woche im österreichischen Parlament im sogenannten Erneuerbaren Ausbaugesetz beschlossen wird. Und da geht es um die Energiegemeinschaften. Ganz kurz erklärt, die Energiegemeinschaften machen es möglich, dass einzelne Mitglieder sich zusammenschließen, Energien gemeinsam produzieren, verwenden, speichern oder auch verkaufen. Und was machen diese Energiegemeinschaften? Diese Energiegemeinschaften geben die Möglichkeit, dass jeder Einzelne und jeder Einzelne Teil dieser Bewegung wird, Teil der Energiewende wird, sich engagieren kann. Dadurch wird die nachhaltige Wirtschaft gestärkt, aber natürlich auch Green Jobs geschaffen. Und das heißt, das ist also wirklich ein wesentlicher Beitrag, um die Bevölkerung mitzunehmen in ganz Europa und hier auch natürlich einen entsprechenden Impact dann für die Klimaziele, aber auch für den Green Deal zu schaffen.
Fantastisch.
Schönen Dank.
Vielen herzlichen Dank und noch einmal ein konkreter Vorschlag, wie alle von uns etwas machen können. Das heißt, danke Ihnen, danke für noch eine Climate Action Story. Kate, let me come back to you very quickly and just ask you, really following up on the taxonomy discussion, what is your view? Do you think this EU taxonomy can really help push towards this green economic transformation? A very brief thought from your side, please.
Yes, it is an essential first step because it begins to put in place those boundaries, those rules. For example, the critical rule of do no significant harm. This is a really important advance over the old approach of cost-benefit analysis, which could justify selling anything. Ultimately, if you do your calculations, you can get away with any story. Do no significant harm brings us clear rules that protect life, that protect the planet. Now, what's going to happen is, how is this put into practice? This is the moment for ensuring that doesn't get greenwashed, green cheating, watered down, twisted, because that is so often what happens. So I call on everybody who is involved in the actual implementation of these rules to hold them to the significance of this decade, the critical moment of this opportunity, and stand for ensuring through the insurance, through the finance, through industry, that we transform now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate. And again, I couldn't agree more. But let's come back for a moment before we close to the international perspective. We all know that the pandemic continues to inflict poverty and inequality on the people in developing countries. Minister Gerd Müller in Deutschland hat natürlich sehr viel Erfahrung mit der Entwicklungshilfe in den Ländern, die derzeit immer noch sehr von der Coronavirus-Pandemie an der leiden. Was macht Deutschland derzeit und was sowohl in diesem speziellen Moment, aber auch längerfristige Maßnahmen, um diese Krise und auch die Klimakrise zu bekämpfen?
Ja, Sie schlagen ja noch mal ein ganz anderes Thema jetzt auf. Und ich freue mich sehr, dass wir auch da über unser eigenes Wohnzimmer hinausdenken.
Das sollten wir.
In Sierra Leone, wo ich vor 10 Tagen war, hat nahezu niemand Zugang zu Vakzinen, zu Impfstoffen. Der afrikanische Kontinent und die Entwicklungsländer insgesamt sind im Augenblick mit 2 bis 3% der Bevölkerung versorgt. Ja, stimmt uns das zufrieden? Ja. Wenn Industrieländer zum Teil, ich nenne jetzt kein einzelnes, das ist nicht Österreich und nicht Deutschland, die 5-fache Menge in Bezug auf die Bevölkerungszahl an Impfstoffen in den Kühlschränken lagern, weil man bräuchte ja vielleicht noch mal eine Nachimpfung in ein paar Monaten. Dann kann ich nur sagen, macht die Kühlschränke auf, übt Solidarität. Impfstoff ist ein globales Gut und wir müssen uns alle im Klaren sein. Am heutigen Tag ist, glaube ich, der erste Tag, wo man in Österreich keine Masken mehr tragen muss. Das Virus wird zurückkommen, wenn wir es nicht weltweit besiegen. Es kam aus Wuhan und es ist noch nicht zurückgegangen. Die afrikanischen Länder werden eben voll erfüllt. Seit heute gilt ein Lockdown in Bangladesch, Indien, jetzt Bangladesch. Wenn wir diese Pandemie nicht weltweit stoppen, werden wir nicht sicher sein. Und deshalb ist globale Solidarität angesagt. Aber auch da nicht Worte, sondern Taten. Und deshalb haben Sie mich eingeladen. Deshalb haben wir vor 10 Tagen, und das ist was Neues, was hier auch noch gar nicht bekannt ist, und ich lade Werner Hoyer ein, mit Finanzen als Europäische Entwicklungsbank, Investitionsbank dabei zu springen. Afrika, die Entwicklungsländer brauchen eine eigene Impfstoffproduktion. Denn wenn ich jetzt sagen würde, Österreich oder Deutsche, verzichtet ihr ein Stück weit, dann kommt es sofort zu Diskussionen. Wir brauchen eigene Impfstoffproduktion in Afrika und in den Entwicklungsländern. Und deshalb habe ich vor 10 Tagen, das war großartig, das Institut Pasteur in Senegal, die Entwicklungsländer sind nicht im letzten Jahrhundert. Die können in vielen Bereichen mit uns mithalten und in diesem Bereich auch den Anstoß gegeben. Wir finanzieren das mit 20 Millionen jetzt voran. Ab April wird der Senegal und zum selben Zeitpunkt die Südafrikaner in die Impfstoffproduktion einsteigen. Das muss das Ziel sein. Eigene Produktion von Impfstoffen und Impfen auch der Armen in den Entwicklungsländern. Sonst kommt das Virus zurück.
Ganz Ihre Meinung und vielen Dank für diese wichtige Unterstützung. In light of COVID-19, clearly we do know that we need to continue the support for developing countries. So let me come for my last question to you, Minister Gewessler. We know Austria has really increased climate ambition over the last years. As an Austrian, I'm very happy to hear about that. I'd love to hear a bit more. I mean, we've heard you've increased your contribution to the Green Climate Fund. You know, we have an important partner with the Austrian Development Bank. What is it that Austria is exactly doing in order to support countries in addressing both the climate and the COVID crisis?
Thanks a lot, and I'd like to echo something that Mr. Müller has said before, my colleague from Germany, that it can never be an either-or. We'll need climate action at home in order to deliver, and we need to do this as a matter of solidarity, but also as a matter of climate justice with a global perspective and with a global view. Because this is a global crisis. We're in this together. What's true in the story of the corona pandemic is just as true in the story of the climate crisis. So yes, Austria increased its contribution to the Green Climate Fund 5-fold last year, which I was very happy to be able to navigate. The Austrian Development Bank that you mentioned is the biggest donor in Austrian climate finance, and it has just announced this week only that as of 2023, 40% of the funding will be targeted to climate finance. And in the ministry, we're also focusing on adaptation, rural development, and also giving additional funds from the climate action side of things to bilateral projects, also taking into account gender aspects, also taking into account the rights of indigenous people. So projects are taking place in Brazil, in Nicaragua, in Kenya, in Uganda, to just name a few. And for what's a cross-cutting issue across all of them is that we cooperate very intensively with NGOs, and that the projects have a participatory approach. Fantastic. Because it's just as a very final point, I'd like to echo something that Kate Raworth has just said, that Arnold Schwarzenegger has said in the beginning, an active, vital, loud, powerful civil society will be crucial in developing and in advancing the solutions in moving towards climate neutrality. And we want to support that wherever possible, whether at home, where I hear civil society, whether abroad, because I really want to thank everybody. Whether you're active in an NGO, whether you're a CEO of a company who's stepping up and saying, yes, I'm ready for change. Really thank you all for your activism, because this is what will move us forward. This is what will bring us forward. It's the most important thing you can do is get active, organize, and we will manage, because we've shown in the last year how we can deal with the crisis. So we will show that we can deal with the next one.
Fantastic. Let's build forward together. Let's make sure that we all do it together. We start from all our own, as we say it in Austrian, let's start in front of our doors and really make sure that we all contribute the personal climate action stories. Just a very quick sum up. Policies lead the way. We need good policies, we need good regulatory frameworks, we need to use public and development finance effectively, wisely to unlock private capital, particularly in emerging economies, and we need innovation to address the sectors and the geographies that are harder at the moment to address. And I think finally we need to shift the whole financial system and really make sure that mainstream is happening. Mainstream is the need of the day. At the heart of that effort is data, is transparency, is the need for a common language like the taxonomy. So for me, it's really up to all of us. We need collaboration for that, but first of all, we need action from all of us. And we will hear about more actions in our next panel, which is the power of consumers, where Barbara Meyer will lead you through some innovative business approaches, both for the small and the large scale. So please join me in thanking my fantastic panel here and virtual for a wonderful conversation. Thank you very much, everyone.